Hello guys and welcome to the second video of the week number 5. As I mentioned before, what we're going to be dealing with right now is with figures of speech. Let's say that this is a transversal topic. We're going to be studying every now and then one of 4 figures of speech that will be useful for us in any of the former and future topics that we're going to use. Okay, so that is why I mentioned that this is transversal, because basically we are going to use them for descriptions, for narrations, for journalistic texts, for a lot of different things. So you can use these figures of speech retroactively, for topics that we have already covered, and for some future ones. Okay, I think we will be studying one at a time, then we will continue with another topic, and then we will return to the second figure of speech and so on until we are done. So if you can go please to the slide number 60, you will see a couple of definitions and images in there, right? Now let's take a look at the first one. It says a figure of speech, and there's a definition in there. It says a rhetorical device that achieves a special effect by using words in distinctive ways. Now, what is rhetorical? What does it mean? Probably you have listened about that definition. If you, about that word, if you are not so clear on the definition, when some politicians are speaking and they say, no, that's just rhetoric, right? Or maybe when you think about a rhetorical question or something like that, right? So rhetoric, in order to simplify the definition, it's all the elements, instruments, and somehow tools that we have in order to ornate, to decorate the language, right? In order to say things in a more elaborate way, to say things in a more somehow formal way sometimes, or poetic or musical. Well, there are different things depending on the effect that you want to achieve. Yes? So every time that I use a figure of speech is because I want to achieve a certain effect. I want to make somebody laugh. I want to create an analogy so the person can understand it better. I want to compare what I am saying to something else. I want to differentiate it. There is always a special effect. We always want to achieve a particular goal with the usage of the figure of speech. And how are we going to use this? Or how are we going to be able to achieve that? By using words in distinctive ways. Yes? Not necessarily we are going to require to learn new words in order to use figures of speech. Sometimes that requires that our vocabulary is a little bit more complete. But in most of the cases, we're simply going to have to use the vocabulary that we already know in different ways, different organizations, but connected with different words. We will see. Okay. Now, figurative language is normally associated with literature. So most of the times, every time that we think about figurative things, so we think about maybe a novel, a tale, poetry, something like that, right? Nevertheless, we use figures of speech all the time, every day, even though we don't realize that sometimes. So let's take a look at some of the expressions that are actually figures of speech, and that we may or may not understand or realize that they are in that category. So let's take a look at some of the examples. Let's check the first one, falling in love. That is when you have certain feeling or emotion towards a person. But if you analyze the literality of it or the representation of it, it's falling. Yes, just jumping from a higher place until you fell into something. Yes, and this something is love. Uh, and and this is a highly metaphorical effect. No, it feels like this void when you don't know what's going to happen, and you feel thrilled and you feel scared, but you feel sort of happy at the same time, and it's an emotion until you hit the ground, right? So that would be a possibility of interpretation of falling in love. Then we have racking our brains. I don't know if you have listened this expression. It's a little bit less common than falling in love, but well, rack is like shake. Yes, moving something. Uh, so racking our brains. Imagine that you take your own head and move it at a high speed, uh, and in order to shake your brain somehow, right? Well, this is an expression that normally is used when you have to think about something very much, and you seem to, you don't seem to solve the question or find a solution for the problem, right? There are equivalences in Spanish, right? Matarse la cabeza, comerse el coco, things like that, right? So again, these are figurative expressions that we don't normally think about too much, but that are actually figures of speech. Hitting a sales target, for example. Yes? So, what is a target? Well, probably because of your orientation towards pedagogy and didactics, you will think about that in terms of a measurable objective to achieve in class, for example, in a particular course in the school or something like that. But think about target as something physical, right? Well, the target is that circular, let's say, tablet where you normally throw darts, yes, or hit an arrow, and then there's this target, right? That in Spanish is called diana or blanco or something like that. So hitting a sales target is, of course, being able, imagine that you're a salesperson, that you sell anything, and that you are able to sell a given amount of money in a period of time. So for this month you are supposed to sell $1,000 and you sold $2,000. So sure, you hit the sales target. So it has to do with the analogy between being successful at throwing a projectile into this target and achieving success into a goal. Okay. And finally, climbing the ladder of success. Again, climbing the ladder is a physical action. You simply just move towards some of the stairs and you go up, right? So same thing. Probably a person who who's climbing the ladder of success. It's probably, well, depends on the measure of success for everybody. But let's say that the more traditional is that he or she is being able to be successful academically or professionally or monetarily, has a better job, or being able to complete an academic challenge, or being able to establish your own business. Well, that person is on that road, right, trying to achieve the top. So those are words that we normally use in our day-to-day, or expression that we use in our day-to-day life, and well, they are figures of speech, right? So you have already studied some figures of speech, or you are supposed to have done that, right? So let's take a look at the example that we have over there in the first one. Metaphors. It says light as a feather, right? So it's not very heavy, it is light. That's a good example of a metaphor, right? You compare one thing with another, and that's it. No, that is not a metaphor. Remember that metaphors do not use comparative words. Yes, comparative words such as, similar to, like. Okay, So a metaphor wouldn't use that. So that is incorrect. Yeah, attention please. So what would be a good example of a metaphor? A good example of a metaphor would be her ruby lips, for example, right? In this case, I am comparing directly without any comparative words, and I am saying that her ruby lips, I am emphasizing on the red of her lips, for example, or how glossy they are, brilliant, or something like that, right? So that could be a possibility, right? Or I can say something like her snow skin, right? So she's really pale, she's really white, and that is a direct comparison without comparative words, okay? Now let's take a look at the second one, the simile, and the simile is I am starving. No, that is not a simile, right? What is that? Remember that we have like sort of normalized the use of saying starving, but that is an exaggeration, yes, because remember that the difference between literally being hungry, that is wanting to eat, and starving is that you are about to die for deprivation of food, right? So in our day-to-day, to be a little bit exaggerated, we say, oof, I'm starving, I want to eat something right now. That's a hyperbole, right? Not a simile. So attention, because you were supposed to know these words or these categories in advance. We're not going to work a lot with metaphors or similes or hyperboles because you're supposed to already know that, right? And that's it. Oh, by the way, the image that I didn't explain, well, just a little silly joke, like all of my jokes, that says, hey, I'm so hungry I could eat you, and there are like two horses over there, right? This is like a graphic sort of explanation or modality of this saying, this proverb in English that says, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Yes, that it's a hyperbole. So it's some sort of a graphic representation. Well, if we go into the next slide, we will see some reasons why we normally use these figures of speech, right? So let's say that as we see over there in some of the examples, normally when you use figures of speech, you are going to reach the reader in a different way. Probably what you want to say is very mundane, very normal, very day-to-day, but if you use a figure of speech establishing all these different mechanics and games with words, it is more likely that your reader feels a little bit more attracted to what you're going to say. Also, let's say these figures of speech sort of have the potential of maintaining the reading interest. Sometimes we have to read long documents or simply mandatorily have to read certain things, so figures of speech may make it a little bit more enjoyable or understandable. Of course, this is also going to expand our vocabulary. It's going to help us somehow use new expressions, sometimes even create new expressions, because you can create your own figures of speech if you follow certain categories, and will amplify your vocabulary. That, especially for a second language, is always good. It also is going to help you be in contact with different environments and fields. Normally, let's say the literary field is not necessarily one that you guys are very much in contact with, unless you enjoy, reading by pleasure or for pleasure, poetry or tales or novels, but that's not that common, right? And then again, it is not about with the literary aspects, because we can find figures of speech in other areas, such as science, such as biology, such as even math, right? So it's possible to be in contact with all of these different things. So guys, the first figure of speech that we are going to cover, I mentioned that we were going to deal with 4 of them, is that of alliteration, okay? So we're going to deal with that in our next video after this general introduction to the figures of speech. So thank you very much and see you on the next video. Bye.